Law of One, Book 3, Session 69, August 29th, 1981. Ra. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Before we proceed, may we make a small request for future workings. At this particular working, there is some slight interference with the contact due to the hair of the instrument. We may suggest the combing of this antenna-like material into a more orderly configuration prior to the working. We communicate now. Questioner. A question which I didn't get to ask at the previous session, and which I will be forced to ask at this time is the trance state the only state in which a mind, body, spirit, positive entity may be lured by a negative entity or adept to negative time-space configuration? Ra. I am Ra. This is a misperceived concept. The mind-body-spirit complex, which freely leaves the third density physical complex, is vulnerable when the appropriate protection is not at hand. You may perceive carefully that very few entities which choose to leave their physical complexes are doing work of such a nature as to attract the polarized attention of negatively oriented entities. The danger to most in trance state, as you term the physical complex being left, is the touching of the physical complex in such a manner as to attract the mind-body-spirit complex back thereunto, or to damage the means by which that which you call ectoplasm is being recalled. This instrument is an anomaly in that it is well that the instrument not be touched or artificial light thrown upon it while in the trance state. However, the ectoplasmic activity is interiorized. The main difficulty, as you are aware, is then the previously discussed negative removal of the entity under its free will. That this can happen only in the trance state is not completely certain, but it is highly probable that in another out-of-body experience, such as death, the entity here examined would, as most positively polarized entities, have a great deal of protection from comrades, guides, and portions of the self which would be aware of the transfer you call the physical death. Questioner. Then you are saying that the protective fields, we will call them, would be available in every condition except for what we call the trance state, which seems to be anomalistic with respect to the others. Is this correct? Ra. I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner. Why is this trance state, as we call it, different? Why are there not entities available in this particular state? Ra. I am Ra. The uniqueness of this situation is not the lack of friends, for this, as all entities, has its guides or angelic presences and, due to polarization, teachers and friends also. The unique characteristic of the workings which the social memory complex Ra and your group have begun is the intent to serve others with the highest attempt at near purity which we as comrades may achieve. This has alerted a much more determined friend of negative polarity, which is interested in removing this particular opportunity. We may say once again 2 notes. Firstly, we searched long ago to find an appropriate channel or instrument and an appropriate support group. If this opportunity is ended, we shall be grateful for that which has been done. But the probability, vortices indicating the location of this configuration again are slight. Secondly, we thank you, for we know what you sacrifice in order to do that which you as a group wish to do. We will not deplete this instrument in so far as we are able. We have attempted to speak of how the instrument may deplete itself through too great a dedication to the working. All these things, and all else we have said, has been heard. We are thankful. In the present situation, we express thanks to the entities who call themselves Latwi. Questioner. Do I understand, then, that death, whether it is by natural means or accidental means or suicide, that all deaths of this type would create the same after-death condition which would avail the entity to its protection from friends? Is this correct? Ra. I am Ra. We presume you mean to inquire whether in the death experience, no matter what the cause, the negative friends are not able to remove an entity. This is correct largely because the entity without the attachment to the space-time physical complex is far more aware and without the gullibility, which is somewhat the hallmark of those who love wholeheartedly. However, the death, if natural, would undoubtedly be the more harmonious, the death by murder being confused and the entity needing some time-space in which to get its bearings, so to speak, the death by suicide causing the necessity for much healing work and, shall we say, the making of a dedication to the third density for the renewed opportunity of learning the lessons set by the higher self. Questioner. Is this also true of unconscious conditions due to accident or medical anesthetic or drugs? Ra. I am Ra. Given that the entity is not attempting to be of service in this particular way which is proceeding now, the entities of negative orientation would not find it possible to remove the mind, body, spirit. The unique characteristic, as we have said, which is, shall we say, dangerous, is the willing of the mind, body, spirit complex outward from the physical complex of third density for the purpose of service to others. In any other situation, this circumstance would not be in effect. Questioner. Would this be a function of the balancing action of the first distortion? Ra. I am Ra. Your query is somewhat opaque. Please restate for specificity. Questioner. I was just guessing that since the mind-body-spirit complexes will from the third density body for a particular duty or service to others would then create a situation primarily with respect to the first distortion where the opportunity for balancing this service by the negative service would be available and, therefore, magically possible for the intrusion of the other polarization. Is this thinking at all correct? Ra. I am Ra. No. The free will of the instrument is indeed a necessary part of the opportunity afforded to the Orion group. However, this free will and the first distortion applies only to the instrument. The entire hope of the Orion group is to infringe upon free will without losing polarity. Thus, this group, if represented by a wise entity, attempts to be clever. Questioner. Has a wanderer ever been so infringed upon by a negative adept and then placed in negative time-space? Ra. I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner. Can you tell me the situation that the wanderer finds himself in and the path back? Why that path could not be the simple moving back into positive time-space? Ra. I am Ra. The path back revolves, firstly, about the higher self's reluctance to enter negative space-time. This may be a significant part of the length of that path. Secondly, when a positively oriented entity incarnates in a thoroughly negative environment, it must needs teach the lessons of the love of self, thus becoming one with its other selves. When this has been accomplished, the entity may then choose to release the potential difference and change polarities. However, the process of learning the accumulated lessons of love of self may be quite lengthy. Also, the entity, in learning these lessons, may lose much positive orientation during the process, and the choice of reversing polarities may be delayed until the mid-sixth density. All of this is, in your way of measurement, time-consuming, although the end result is well. Questioner. Is it possible to tell me roughly how many wanderers who have come to this planet during this master cycle have experienced this displacement into a negative time-space? Ra, I am Ra. We can note the number of such occurrences. There has been only one. We cannot, due to the law of confusion, discuss the entity. Questioner: You said that the higher self is reluctant to enter negative space-time. Is that correct? Ra, I am Ra. The incarnative process involves being incarnated from time-space to space-time. This is correct. Questioner: I will make this statement and see if I am correct. When first moved into time-space of a negative polarization, the positive entity experiences nothing but darkness. Then, by incarnation into a negative space-time by the higher self, it experiences a negative space-time environment with negatively polarized other selves. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner: It would seem to me that it would be an extremely difficult situation for the positively polarized entity, and the learning process would be extremely traumatic. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. Let us say that the positively polarized individual makes a poor student of the love of self, and thus spends much more time, if you will, than those native to that pattern of vibrations. Questioner: I am assuming that this displacement must be a function of his free will in some way. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is absolutely correct. Questioner: This is a point that I find quite confusing to me. It is the function of the free will of the positively oriented entity to move into the negatively polarized time-space. However, it is also a function of his lack of understanding of what he is doing. I am sure that if the entity had full understanding of what he was doing, he would not do it. It is a function of his negatively polarized other self creating a situation where he is lured to that configuration. What is the principle with respect to the first distortion that allows this to occur, since we have two portions of the Creator, each of equal value or of equal potential, but oppositely polarized, and we have this situation resulting? Could you tell me the philosophical principle behind this particular act? Ra, I am Ra. There are two important points in this regard. Firstly, we may note the situation wherein an entity gets a roadmap which is poorly marked and in fact is quite incorrect. The entity sets out to its destination. It wishes only to reach the point of destination, but, becoming confused by the faulty authority and not knowing the territory through which it drives, it becomes hopelessly lost. Free will does not mean that there will be no circumstances when calculations will be awry. This is so in all aspects of the life experience. Although there are no mistakes, there are surprises. Secondly, that which we and you do in workings such as this carries a magical charge. If you would use this much misunderstood term, perhaps we may say a metaphysical power. Those who do work of power are available for communication to and from entities of roughly similar power. It is fortunate that the Orion entity does not have the native power of this group. However, it is quite disciplined, whereas this group lacks the finesse equivalent to its power. Each is working in consciousness, but the group has not begun a work as a group. The individual work is helpful for the group in mutually an aid one to another. Questioner: This instrument performs services that involve channeling other members of the Confederation. We are reluctant to continue this because of the possibility of her slipping into trance and being offered the services of the negatively polarized entity or adept. Are there any safeguards to create a situation whereby she cannot go into trance other than at a protected working such as this one? Ra, I am Ra. There are three. Firstly, the instrument must needs improve the disciplined subconscious taboo against requesting Ra. This would involve daily conscious and serious thought. The second safeguard is the refraining from the opening of the instrument to questions and answers for the present. The third is quite gross in its appearance, but suffices to keep the instrument in its physical complex. The hand may be held. Questioner: Are you saying then that just by holding the instrument's hand during the channeling sessions, this would prevent trance? Ra: I am Ra. This would prevent those levels of meditation which necessarily precede trance. Also, in the event that, unlikely as it might seem, the entity grew able to leave the physical complex, the auric infringement and tactile pressure would cause the mind-body-spirit complex to refrain from leaving. We may note that long practice at the art which each intuits here would be helpful. We cannot speak of methodology, for the infringement would be most great. However, to speak of group efforts is, as we scan each, merely confirmation of what is known. Therefore, this we may do. We have the available energy for one fairly brief query. Questioner: There are many techniques and ways of practicing so-called white magical arts. Are rituals designed by a particular group for their own particular use just as good or possibly better than those that have been practiced by groups such as the Order of the Golden Dawn and other magical groups? Ra: I am Ra. Although we are unable to speak with precision on this query, we may note some gratification that the questioner has penetrated some of the gist of a formidable system of service and discipline. I am Ra. May we thank you again, my friends, for your conscientiousness. All is well. We leave you rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one infinite Creator. Go forth with joy. Adonai.